Basically established that there's about 4 levels of financial security, and I guess we'll run through each one of those because that sort of dictates where you're sort of at. And once you do become financially free, that's obviously once your passive income starts to take care of all your expenses, and then you can live basically without having to sacrifice anything.
What are we talking about today, brother?
All right, so I figured we'd have a chat about financial freedom and what that actually means, because I don't think people actually understand what that means.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's similar, especially in what I do, it gets thrown around a lot. Like a lot of people, when they come in or they're taking one of our courses or whatever, they're kind of really thinking about, okay, well, one of the words that they use to describe what they want is financial freedom. But I think often it's people use even just something as such as a good wage, right? Like, financially free in some people's minds can be, just having enough money to live and not have to worry about it. And then what you soon realize is at that point is that you're probably not financially free because you do have to worry about it, and that's why you continue to try to work hard for your money.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think probably what we're going to go through today is try to unpack what is financially free, and what are some of the, what truly is it, and how do you achieve it?
Yeah, so I've basically established that there's about 4 levels of financial security, and I guess we'll run through each one of those because that sort of dictates where you're sort of at. And once you do become financially free, that's obviously once your passive income starts to take care of all your expenses, and then you can live basically without having to sacrifice anything. So people often will sacrifice now or they'll sacrifice in the future, depending on how much money they make in their income. But someone who's financially free, they don't have to make that sacrifice. So yeah, let's unpack that.
Awesome. What are we thinking? How do you want to do this? Do we want to unpack what we believe financially free is first, and then we can dive into some of those levels?
Yeah, I can do that.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, financial freedom is essentially when your passive income pays for your living standards. So yeah, you won't have to essentially work for a living. You become work optional, if that makes sense. And passive income can come from rental properties. It can come from dividend-paying stocks, annuities, social security, all that sort of thing.
And this is such an important thing, right? Because we've identified this with the podcast. Like, we cover business, we cover wealth, and we cover building your character. Mm-hmm. And we think that in order for you guys to improve your life, for anyone listening, in order for you to improve your life dramatically, you really have to start to master those 3 things. Mm-hmm. And we believe that in the next 10 years that 70% of people in the world are going to have to run their own business.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not going to make economic sense.
Mm-hmm.
Money's getting printed, the cost of living's going up, inflation.
Wages aren't increasing.
Wages aren't increasing at anywhere near the same rate, which means that the cost of living is outrunning what we earn from having a job. So that's why more people are starting to think about becoming self-employed. Mm-hmm. More people are becoming freelancers. More people want that freedom. That's why when we talk about financial freedom. But I think one of the most interesting things that I look at here is going, okay, well, and one thing that I started to realize on my journey, and I see it with everybody, and that's why we started this podcast and brought in the investors section to the podcast or the investors show, is once you earn money or you extract the value from your business, one of the key elements to being financially free, and again, I even look at it, being financially free allows you to do what you want to do and do more of what you want to do and not have compromised decisions. Mm-hmm. You have to start to get that money to work for you because every single day it's getting less and less valuable, right? So one of my biggest pet peeves, right, is the money I worked extremely hard for, the money that I...
Especially in those early years, when you have to grind. Yeah.
Fuck. I just think back to catching the train at Southern Cross Station at fucking getting there at 4 a.m. and just going, oh man, like I was the only person there, and I was just like, I think about those times and I think, fuck, like my money is just getting devalued, like, and that.
You weren't thinking that at the time though, were you?
Oh hell no,
You had
I had
no idea.
no idea. But now I look back and even now it's like, getting your money to work to at least just hold its value is so important to hold your purchasing power. So I think
once you learn those principles so early on as well, you can really establish that $1 today could potentially equal $10 tomorrow. And once you have that realization, you start looking at that dollar in a whole different light, because you work so hard for that dollar. And then the power of compounding and that sort of thing can allow that money to grow for you without having to do a thing.
Yeah, and it's like even the other way, right?
Yeah.
How that dollar could become less.
Well, yeah.
If you're not, like...
Well, it is. It is,
and
exactly.
that's the thing
but most people don't realise that.
Nah, you don't realise it because $1 is seen as $1. And I think that was one of my biggest realisations after listening to Rao.
Yeah.
I remember listening to his exponential age one, and it's like, well, the reason that we don't see that our dollars become less valuable is because we're always comparing currency to currency. So we might be comparing the Australian dollar to the US dollar, but they're both devaluing. So that's why we never really see
they're all devaluing against each other.
Exactly, right? So global fiat currency is all devaluing.
Yeah.
And that's why it's almost like an illusion. Like we just think that the world's fucking ticking over in this grand old fashion and everything's normal, when in reality, our money's becoming less and less valuable. And that's what we're seeing with property. At the moment, people who are trying to buy property are being priced out of, basically here in Melbourne. So for any of our Melburnians listening, Sunshine's $1 million now, or close to.
Crazy.
That's wild.
Crazy.
Like, Braybrook's getting close to $1 million. It's like close to, right? But it's like, I'm sure people around the world are experiencing this as well, where it's like, property prices are just soaring and you're forced to go buy somewhere that you don't necessarily want to live. And that's a reality of life, but it's just happening so much at the moment that, it does show that your ability to kind of get your money working for you and at least hold its value is so important to be able to build wealth in life. And, one thing that I would say is we talk to Terry Condon, we talk to those guys, and they're really good at explaining what we use money for, the psychology of it, the utility of it.
What's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you got to factor in all of those before anything else.
Yeah, and one thing that like Tez has taught me over the journey as well is money is a utility or a tool. Money is a tool that allows you to do more of the things you want to do. So mastery, travel, connection, love, all of these things are things that money allows you to do more of. So going on holidays with your family, buying property, your own home for your family, making greater connections from travel potentially, and mastery, getting better at the thing that you're passionate about. So I think, when we look at money through that lens, we actually start to look at it as a tool, and then that's when we can start to maybe make some of these moves that allows you to be financially free.
Well, something that I also realized is that obviously the more you earn, the more your expenses increase as well. But then you have that initial validation where you go out and you buy a nice car, or you buy something that you wouldn't necessarily buy normally, all to sort of get that instant hit of endorphins and just feeling good about yourself and trying to prove yourself to others and that sort of thing. But that wears off so quickly, and then it becomes about the things that fulfill you in life and the things that actually make you happy. And then you soon realize that those things aren't necessarily goods that you buy. It's about spending that time with your family and doing work that fulfills you and having a purpose outside of just accruing all these things that don't actually contribute to your life.
Yeah.
And so being financially free means that you can work on those pursuits without having to worry about slaving for an extra for money in your bank account.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, right? Is like, I think for a long time, even myself, but I know other people, is like, what do? They save for a house, right? Because they believe that this is kind of like the Australian dream, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the whole notion that you just hodl money in your bank account until you can buy a house, the way I think about this is like, it's almost like, imagine you had to, like, okay, so imagine the goal was chasing down this Ferrari for some reason, right? And the Ferrari starts at 10 kilometers per hour. So you're jogging after this car. Then let's say every kilometer, it goes up 10 kilometers per hour,
Yeah.
right? So this car is getting faster and you're chasing this car because, let's say that if you touch the car, you get to own it, right? And you've got this Ferrari. It's almost like that. So what I mean is that, let's say that the car is the house, right? And you're chasing, and you want to have this house, except because your money's becoming less and less valuable, it's actually like that house is getting further and further away because you're trying to save money, and that's what you believe is going to allow you to build wealth.
Which isn't even your own fault, because those stumps are being moved further and further away, not by your doing, but by all the stimulus and everything that you see or that you don't see in the background that is moving everything further away from you, and in that you need to take financial responsibility for that and be aware of it, because the sooner you become aware of it, the sooner you can put actions in place to try and get you there sooner. So whether it might be, I don't know, reducing your expenses or finding an additional income on the side or something like that, that's the only way that you're going to get there.
Yeah, 100%. And it's crazy to me, like, from investing over the last 3 years and really kind of going hard at it, like making it something that I'm so self-aware about on a weekly basis, really getting active, really doing my research, hitting some big winners, obviously losing as well. But one thing that I've realized is that it's crazy how, I'm not going to say easy, but how quick it can happen, and how, like, you just start to kind of become aware of, like, hang on a second, like, how wasn't I doing this prior? Because we talk about savings, and I know we've done a full podcast on that. So if you want to understand how to build your savings up and kind of understand about savings, go back and listen to that episode potentially after this one. But one of the biggest things was like, okay, once I started to get my money to work for me, my wealth just started to grow exponentially. And it was like, you struggle so hard for so long because you're trying to save money. And,
well, you become...
And you start to realize, you're like, okay, so why is this getting harder for me? It's like, I'm getting better at saving, but this isn't getting any easier. And that's because all your costs are going up at the same time, and your wage isn't dramatically increasing unless you're getting active from that perspective as well. But even that's not the game that you want to be playing.
Yeah. I suppose you went from being more financially solvent to then becoming more robust with your wealth, because you were starting to notice that your savings was getting to the point where you had 6, 12 months, 2 years worth of savings in the bank and that sort of thing, as opposed to living paycheck to paycheck or sustaining your lifestyle with credit cards or whatever the case may be. And it wasn't until you start to, learn about your financial situation and that sort of thing, that you actually started to really make a difference in that. And it's amazing, once you become a little bit more financially robust, you then move closer and closer to that point where you will be freer.
Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson for me was just, I got pretty lucky. My first ever investment was a winner. But I think from being active in the market and actually seeing how the way that you can make money, and then having more skin in the game. So instead of having cash in the bank account, putting a certain, I think we've got 3 months worth of income or like expenses sitting in a bank account, and then the rest is all in the markets, and then what that can do when that money gets to work for you.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Like there was a whole notion that like cash is king and all this sort of thing, whereas now, like, once you actually realize what is happening, you'd soon realize that cash is actually trash. So you're better off having that money invested in some capacity. Doesn't have to be stocks, doesn't have to be crypto, whatever you're comfortable with. But the sooner you get that money to work for you, then the sooner you'll start moving up those ranks.
I'm interested to hear about what you Andy, because I mean, for someone like, because you're quite new to investing,
Yeah.
right? So I'm actually quite interested to hear your perspective on it, because I mean, I'm talking from someone who's still newish to investing, but I'm kind of understand it now. But what's your experience around like this kind of thing when it comes to like savings and you know, you've got into investing at the moment, like you've hit some winners on uranium and these kind of things.
Yeah.
Like, how do you kind of perceive the situation around savings and you know, has it started to shift your mindset?
Yeah, well, I guess inflation is a good one that kind of, like, even going to the supermarket now. You go to the supermarket and you buy something.
Everything's more expensive, isn't it?
It's crazy. When you said it, I was like, oh, I noticed that now. And if you're on an income that doesn't change very
It's
often.
all small changes though, like your electricity bill has started to increase, petrol prices have increased.
Your scoff spread.
Yeah. I think it's definitely opened my eyes. Like, you know, EFTs and sort of things like that, where you can be making it, you know, 20% rather than before I'd been into investing, you just put the money in your bank account and that was seen as an asset, you know, like, oh, look, I've got 10, 15 grand. It's like, I got, like, my housemate's like 22. He's got like 10 grand. I'm like, fuck, you got to do something with it, mate. Handball it off. You know what I mean? So just moving it into places where you're confident that it will sit. So that's been really...
That's it. And like you've got to sort of, when you go in to make investments, you've got to go in realizing that there's going to be times when the market does go down and you're not always going to pick winners as well. My first 2 investments were losers. Maya and Santos, which is an oil company. I invested into that one right at its peak, and I think I lost 50% or something on it, but it was such a good learning experience for me. But you've got to invest realizing that markets are going to go down at some point, so you just have to factor that into your decision making.
100%. You know, it's and that's what I mean is actually having skin in the game just helps so much. Like, you know, I hit a big winner with my first one on PointsBet, and then my second stock tanked 80%. So, you know, I kind of experienced both the highs and the lows, and I think just seeing how much your money can compound is a really great insight initially to kind of going, okay, well, if I do this properly and put some effort in here, because I think that's what humans need. We need to kind of have a bit of a clip where it's like, okay, this can actually work. Like, because a lot of people, when they come into investing, they're like, oh yeah, it's just, you know, I don't know where to start. And it's like, we just use that excuse over and over again. And the reality is like, nobody really knows where to start. Like, you can sit down with an expert and think you know it all, but until you've got money in the markets, you don't truly understand.
You read Skin in the Game, didn't you?
Yes.
Nicholas Taleb?
Yeah.
Same thing applies with business as well. You know, once you have actual skin in the game and it's all off your own bat, you have to do the work yourself. That's when you realize, like, that's when it finally triggers within you that, shit, I've actually got to step up here and actually provide for myself and provide for my family and that sort of thing.
Yeah, or like, I could lose the money I'm putting in. Like, you know, if you, like, you know, that's one of the scariest things, you know. Like, I remember when we first invested in Bitcoin, you know, like we kind of had to make a decision and we were going to go pretty heavy, you know, and you did as well. And it's like, well, I could potentially lose this money, so I just want to make sure this is the right decision.
I did what? It was like 8 months worth of research for that one decision, and I went big on it, and I don't think I slept well.
Yeah, you didn't sleep for that first month. I remember you coming into work.
Month, but I slept bloody good during December last year.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's such a good point, right? Because it's like, you know, what I think, I know you're up 200%.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm up I reckon I'm up about 170, right, on those investments. And it's crazy. Like, that's 107. So we've pretty much doubled our money for going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there was a lot of research involved, but now that money just compounds and compounds and compounds. And it's crazy. Like, I was looking, man, I reckon for the last, apart from today, which we're kind of seeing a sea of red, but I reckon for the last 6 weeks or the last kind of, around that, like, man, like, I've been waking up and like, you know, the gains have been real, right? But it's crazy because you kind of look at it and And it's like that money is like, that's a wage. You know, like over the last 6 weeks, it's like it's more than a wage, to be fair. Like it would be twice the average wage just going up.
Yeah.
And that's just because that money is getting to work. And that's a part of what we're talking about when we talk about financial freedom, is like, how well can you get the money that you're extracting from either a company or a job and get that to go to work for you? Because if you can do that, and you can build those habits and behaviors, you'll get better at it, you'll learn, but that money will just keep getting to work for you, and eventually that's what leads to financial freedom.
Exactly. Well, I even checked my my portfolio. I did the numbers on just my stocks, so not including crypto or anything like that. My portfolio's up 69% year to date so far.
And it hasn't been a great year.
It hasn't been a great year. It's been been a year where it's sort of tracked sideways, especially in the investments I'm in, and yet it sort of took me back a little bit. I was like, where did this come from? You know? And this is just how markets, obviously they don't go up like that all the time, but it's just such a blessing, you know, and it allows me to work on projects like this and to pursue other business ideas. I don't have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck.
That's one of the biggest ones.
Because I've built up to that point.
That's easily one of the biggest ones. Like when you don't have compromised decisions and you can do the things you're most passionate about, you know, like a lot of people don't get that.
And I feel so much more fulfilled than I ever have at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one thing, like, again, we understand that for you guys that are listening, you want to do what you're passionate about. You want to do what you feel most fulfilled doing, right? And a big part of that is obviously being able to build wealth and get financial freedom. So, all right, let's start to break down some of these core areas. So these 4 levels or tiers to financial freedom, and kind of maybe we can give some examples and just kind of break them down.
Yeah, so the first step is basically being financially solvent. So this is when you're living paycheck to paycheck. You might have credit card debt, and you're basically one step away from financial ruin. You know, if you lose your job, that's going to have a significant impact on your life. It's going to cause you a lot of stress. And this is the area that you need to try and get out of as quickly as you possibly can. Only way to do that is to try and upskill yourself and focus on your expenses. You know, if you can get your expenses down to a point where you're living comfortably and that sort of thing, and you're able to then start prioritizing your work. You might want to like get promoted, focus on your sales within your business and that sort of thing. Get to that point where you can start to put money aside and get to the point where it to start working for you.
Yeah, I think so. So like I look at myself and a really easy example is me, you know, like
Well, we all start there, you know, especially when you're young, you're unskilled, you haven't got experience, you got to take that entry level role. Once you start to build up from that stage, that's when it gets a little bit easier, but we all start there.
Yeah. Like for me, I was earning like like when I was a personal trainer, my company was doing, you know, we were doing probably 160, 180 grand a year in revenue, but
your expenses
my
were terrible.
expenses were so, like, I just remember like from the age of like 20 to 23, 24, like, man, like I was living week to week. You know, I was traveling a lot. I did a lot of travel and stuff like that, but I was just spending all my money. And I just remember like, you know, I talked about this the other night on a live with someone, but like going through periods of anxiety and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And purely one, because I was trying to live outside my means, you know, and that's because when you come from like, you know, like a place where you haven't earned much money before and you start earning money, you kind of attach a certain identity to that money. So for me, it was like living in a certain area, you know, and what I ended up doing was living in like a shoebox in a certain area that still cost me a lot of money. You know, I was spending more back then on where I was living than what I am now.
Yeah.
Right. And like, you know, my financial position is 10
so
times as good, right?
Yeah.
It's so different.
Yeah.
But I was spending more back then, and then getting a new car, you know, and then the other side of it was like there was all these expenses even within my business that I was spending to make it look like I was doing better than what I was.
Yeah.
And then I was like there was just ridiculous amounts of spending going on, even though I was bringing in good money, and I was living, paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes I might build up some good capital, but
and then you go and blow it on
exactly
a night out or
a holiday or something like that, and it's like, no, but I deserve that.
There's nothing wrong with that though. I think when you're young, you still have to go out and chase those experiences.
I think you can do both though.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I don't, and there's going to be 20-year-olds listening to this, and I just hope that you don't do it that way because you can do both. I know people that did both.
So a strategy that I did, that I used when I was younger and didn't have that much income was I would set aside $10 a day. So that would give me $3,650 that I could go and spend on a holiday. Obviously, it's not going to get you much, but it's still something. That's a
nice Bali trip.
Bali or something, yeah, for us here in Australia. And that's guilt-free. You can go and spend all of that. You don't have to worry. But at least then I had money saved away. You want to get to that point where you at least have 3 months saved away, So then that way, if you do happen to lose your job or something like that, you're not stressed that you're going to have to go onto the dole, and you're not going to have to start just taking job offers for the sake of taking a job offer.
Yeah. So one of the big things would be getting rid of debt, paying down
Big
debt
time.
first of all.
Avoid credit cards.
Oh man.
If you don't have a good relationship with credit, do not use a credit card.
Yeah. They're the devil.
Oh yeah.
They're the devil.
Once you get into that debt cycle where they just... I've seen people... my mum was the same as well. She had credit cards and you end up just living to pay off your credit card.
I had to, I made some mistakes early on in life, crashing a car and these kind of things, which put me into debt. And I had to kind of work my way out of that. But, and even though it's funny, there would be nights that I would go out and I'd, or something like that when I was younger and I would spend on the credit card. And it's that was just me being young and dumb.
Yeah.
But it's I didn't get myself into that credit card debt from just getting a credit card and spending it on dumb shit. I just made a mistake, and that was the only way I could pay off that mistake.
Yeah.
And then, so that kind of led me down that track. But for that I would almost say that is the sole thing that put me 5 years behind. Because I just had to pay that down. I think I ended up paying down $60,000 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I know people who would get a credit card, they'd go on a holiday on the credit card and then they'd come back to work it off. My grandfather would be rolling in his grave if he heard that. He instilled in me, you do the hard work first and then you reward yourself. Whereas too many people now, especially this was when we were younger, they'd get a credit card, they'd book a holiday on it, and then they'd come back and have to grind so hard, and then they'd have no reprieve.
Because I think the other thing is once you get that debt paid off and you start to build up your savings, once you get to that 3-month mark, it's
security.
It's game on. More importantly, that's when you can really pump money into the markets.
Yeah.
The way I look at it now is within myself is I only ever really sit on that 3 months worth of cash in the bank.
I get anxiety having cash in the bank.
Yeah,
now,
and then the rest of it's just boom, pumping money in. And at the moment, that's we just. Well, one thing that we're doing, is kind of trying to learn about NFTs. Well, it's we look at NFTs as an investment. I think I put about $7,000 worth of money into NFTs. I'm actually setting a goal of I want to get that to 20, right? And I just want to, because I want to keep flipping them to kind of get it to that point. But it's the reality is you get to do that stuff and you get to kind of explore and you get to kind of, even with crypto and stocks and these kind of things, instead of having to put that money into debt or even just into savings, once you get to that point where you've got debt free, you've got that 2 to 3 months worth of income sitting in the bank, then basically 100% from there can actually go into the markets.
Yeah.
If you've got that kind of risk tolerance. And I think that's where you can really start to probably move towards that next level of financial freedom, which is, I think it's robustness, you said.
Well, you and I have been talking about NFTs quite a lot over the last couple of weeks. I just think it's more and more people need to be aware of this. I invested into an NFT on the weekend that cost me $8,000. It earns me $10 every single day. The yield on that over the course of a year is 67%. Can you imagine that? 67% yield
It's crazy, isn't it?
on something like this. So after a year and a half, I will have paid off that whole NFT.
How's it giving you $10 a day? It's just going up.
It earns tokens. It's insane. And yeah, this is just something that I just can't believe that this is now a thing. But back in the day, it used to be flipping real estate. Now it's flipping NFTs.
Yeah, but again, like the ability to do that.
You have to get to the point where you can take that
Like I
risk.
had to have $7,000 there that we're willing to put in.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that,
So over the course of the time that I've known you, you went from that stage where you were solvent to now to the point where you were then robust. You were able to save up about 6 to 12 months worth of income or savings. And it just allowed you to have a little bit more freedom to pursue these different investments and also to take more chances on your business as well, because you had that financial backing where you weren't just living paycheck to paycheck anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I probably haven't lived paycheck to paycheck since I was about 24, but I would say that over that time I was probably doing it the slow way, right?
Yeah.
Like I think what I would say is that my percent of money in the market was probably like, I'd put like 20% of my money in the market, whereas now it's like 70.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think that's the transition that you make. And I think that's really where that passive income starts coming in, where you're not reliant on, you're not just purely reliant on business growth. And
you've reined in your expenses too. You're the biggest tight ass I know.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I've always been like that. I've never really... that's not true. When I was younger, I wasn't. But, as it's gone by...
Well, you're not spending your money on going out partying or extravagant holidays and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You travel now with a purpose instead of just going over to get fucked up, basically.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of like, I think, taking that step, right, is really important. And I think that's the difference is like... your savings actually grows, not just when you put money into it, but it grows when you're not looking at it. And that's, it's like 10% a month is all you need.
Yeah.
10% a year, if you were to do that over a long period of time. But, if you can get 10% or, that's 10% a month, even a lot. But even if you're getting like 5% a month or 3% a month, you can compound that over the year. And that's like what you said, that's that 60% growth. And, for everyone listening, put whatever you've got in your savings right now, imagine that you had an extra 70% sitting there and you didn't have to work for it. And it just happened because you made the right decisions and you spent your spare time researching the markets instead of watching Netflix, and you spent your time reading articles instead of scrolling on your phone or going on Instagram. And these are the kind of little decisions that you start to shift. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is study and I'll research and I'll do these things. And that's why I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I get up at 4:30 so I can do those things before I start my business day, because that's where I do a lot of my learning and a lot of my research. And I think your behaviors will follow. And that's probably one thing that we that will start to allow you to be financially free.
You and I spent the whole weekend researching, like we were learning and we were buying and selling NFTs pretty much all weekend.
Yeah, purely just to learn.
Yeah, but I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing that because it meant that I was moving myself forward, know, and I made money off it as well.
All right, so let's talk financial robustness then. So what does that mean to someone?
Yeah, so as I said, 6 to 12 months of savings in the bank. You probably don't have any high interest, so you have no credit card debt or anything like that. You may have debt still from might be student loans or it might be from a mortgage, but it's all low interest. But you're still at a point where if you lost your job, you would start to eat into your net worth, because obviously you would have to use that money to start paying off your expenses and that sort of thing. And then the next step is financial freedom. So you get to the point where you're at a point where you don't have to solely rely on a job. You become sort of work optional, if that makes sense. So you might have, say, 10 years worth of savings in the bank.
How do you get to that point? Because that's the biggest question here, right? It's not about understanding what is what.
Yep.
It's about going, so how do you start to move up those layers? So we just talked about some of the behaviors, some of the actions, some of the things you have to do to get from financially solvent to financially robust. But I think that next step is one thing that is really important. So, and when you say that, when you don't have to rely on a job, so that obviously means that you've got you're earning enough from investments that it allows you to potentially even just take a few years off or something like that.
So the way that I went about it was I focus on my expenses. I got my expenses right down to the point where I was then able to put away, say, 30 to, say, 50% of my income into my stock picks and that sort of thing. And then gradually over time, that compounds to the point where your savings is at that point where you've got 10 years stashed away. And that's when you can start to have real significant effects on the returns that you make. Because, say, a 10% return on $10,000 is only $1,000. That's not going to make that much of a difference in your life. 10% return on $100,000 is $10,000. Yes, you're starting to make a bit of a difference to your life, an extra $10,000 that could potentially go towards more savings or anything. 10% return on $1 million, that's when you start to really make a difference, because that's $100,000.
And that's why properties, like, you know, in the grand scheme of things, property is like can be one of those things that can be life-changing, because at the end of the day, you're leveraging debt to get an increase. And so, you know, if I can borrow $1 million and we get that 10% increase on $1 million, we're making 100K, right? So, and that's, you know, that's obviously one way that people can kind of build that.
You just
up.
have to be smart with debt, you know, if especially in the current environment where you can get out debt at a really low interest rate, it makes sense to then be able to accrue more wealth via property. I take out debt to buy more equity or crypto. But I can do that because I've got enough to fall back on, obviously. I wouldn't suggest everyone do that. But we do it all in property, you know. Property is the same thing. And it allows you to build up equity, and you're not wasting that money away on rent and that sort of thing. But, yeah, you got to be smart about it. You don't want to be just accruing personal loans or credit cards and that sort of thing, because that's when you get yourself into trouble.
So I guess the way to kind of go about it then is to continuously, or like, you know, try to get as much of your money as possible that you are earning. You know, so if you do have a job or a company, how can you get as much of that money as possible to work for you? And your aim should be to do that over time.
Yeah.
And build up your positions.
Because that's how you compound your wealth. You know, the sooner you start to do that and realize that new car or that new Gucci handbag or whatever it might be doesn't actually bring you that much happiness. If anything, it causes you more stress because you've just gone out and spent this money on something that, especially in terms of a car, ends up costing you more money because you've got more maintenance and these sort of things. So the sooner you start to realize that and to put that money to work and get it to really start compounding for you, that's when you know you're getting into a position where you are going to be more financially free in the future.
So important, isn't it? And I think one of the things, we actually talked about this with PJ on the podcast, but one of the best things that I've done is map out my expenses for the whole year.
Yeah.
Right, so absolutely get everything nailed down. What am I spending for the whole year? What things can I cut back on? You know, and what things do I not have to spend? You know, like, you know, I reckon I would live off. You know, if I'm looking outside of what I pay for my living, right? So, like for where I live, I reckon, and we save. I would save 50% of my wage. And I reckon I live off $300 a week. Outside of my wage, $250.
So that's when you know
that's including food.
Yeah.
Right. So like and like that's me being a minimalist. Like I buy one new T-shirt every year, but you know, and it's probably one thing I can get better at. But it's like I think that's again like I look at that's a consequence of the fact that I've seen what getting my money into the markets can do.
Yeah. And
I think, you know, especially right now, we're in really big. there's a lot going on, but I think we're also in probably one of the biggest opportunities of our lifetime.
Absolutely.
And that's for me is like, that's where my, if it means I have to look like a bum for 2 years to get that money in the market and to do those things, then I'm willing to do it.
So you want to get to the point where being financially free means that you're not necessarily having to sacrifice. You're not having to sacrifice today in order to live a better future. Or you're not having to sacrifice having a better future in order to live for today, And so that's what financial freedom means to me. And obviously it means something different to everybody, but that's ultimately what I see it as. And I'm now at the point where my returns far exceed my expenses. And so I can continue living and have my money continually grow for me. And that allows me to then pursue other things. And I'm not the type of person I need to go out and have a nice car or anything like that, although sometimes I feel a little bit...
Bro, you every 3 months you're test driving something new.
He's got a Maserati out the front. What was he talking about?
But I quickly realized that something like that isn't going to make me happy. And it's forced me to really knuckle down and realize or prioritize self-awareness and actually discovering what makes me happy. And so for me, it's pursuing businesses that actually I'm passionate about, exercising, spending time with people that I care about, family, friends, and that sort of thing. And that's actually the thing that I'm working towards, And I now have the freedom to be able to prioritize all of those things as opposed to working because I need to pay for my living, And I guess that's what a lot of people are striving for. It's, in my opinion, it shouldn't be about going out and buying nice cars or having a bigger house, because those things don't matter at the end of the day.
It's Elon, Elon's living in a 400 square foot house at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a box house. It's like put together. It's crazy, ridiculous. Sold all of his assets. And it's interesting, right? Like, cause I think he had he had like nearly 90 to $100 million worth of property before this.
Yeah.
And then he sold it down and he lives in like a place that would probably not much bigger than the office we're sitting in right now.
Well, I think he realized that one of the strongest traits of happiness is flow. When you get in that feeling that you're just in flow and you're working on something that you're passionate about and that sort of thing, to me, that is true happiness, and you get that small spike in feeling good about yourself and that sort of thing when you do go out and you buy something that you really like, and you should be able to do that, but it's not long lasting, is it? It only lasts for a little bit, and eventually you realize that car is just like any other car, it costs you more too.
The biggest thing for me, like, none of that stuff makes me happy, and I've been self-aware of that for a very long time. Like, the way I think about financial freedom is about that. Is that I just want to be able to work on what I want to work on.
Spend time with Noah and Liv.
My family, like when I have kids, I want to be able to pick them up from school. I want to be able to drop them off. I want them to be able to do what they want to do in life. Tobes talked about this, and that kind of resonated with me a lot, is that I know that I'm going to be having a family soon, so I just want them to be able to do what they want to do in life. I want Liv to be able to do what she wants to do in life. Like, want to, and allow her to kind of prosper and do the things she wants to do, because we were able to put the work in now and become financially free. And that's the biggest thing, is that I want to do what excites me in life. I don't want to ever be held back. I want to do what I'm most passionate about. I want to be able to podcast. I want to be able to, I want to be able to do these things without having to worry. And I want my family to be able to do the things they want to do without having to worry. And I think that's the thing for me about being financially free that drives me to want to do these things, and want to improve. And I'm someone that I'm just, we've talked about this, curious, I want to be able to be curious. Like, I want to be able to go in and research NFTs for 3 days in a row if I can, and that's why I'm so big on what we're doing here as a company, and what we're doing with this podcast is we're teaching business. We want people to understand how to create a business that allows them passivity, right? And the ability to be passive and earn a passive income through their business, extract value from that, turn that into a wealth building machine outside of their business, and then have the character to kind of face the obstacles that come, along this journey, and so that they can find true happiness and live the life that they want to live. And that's because I'm on that journey. I'm living that day in, day out. You're living that day in, day out. And that's something that we're just super passionate about. And more than anything, we're just sharing our learnings and sharing our experiences. And because you can see at the crux of everything we're talking about right now is the fact that there are people out there that struggle, right? And there are people out there that go through pain. I have people that reach out to me, and I'm sure you do too, but even when I'm working with business owners, and you just see the pain and the struggle and the words that come out of their mouth about what they want, and I just want to be able to do this for my family. The same words we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And in reality, I truly believe that the system isn't set up for that.
No.
The system's not set up for that. Otherwise, we would learn this stuff in school. Otherwise, jobs, you would be earning more money for your jobs compared to the cost of living, not less. So the system at the moment is broken. It's not set up for that. But really what we're trying to do is help people navigate that. And financial freedom is one of those things that, again, what would you be doing right now if you didn't have to do the things that you are forced into doing, right? And that's, I think, a place that I do hope that everyone can get to, right? And that's, that's probably the mission, right? Like that's the vision of what we're trying to do, is create awareness, and it needs to be accessible. This is not costing anybody a cent.
Yeah.
Click on your phone, listen in, take notes, go and apply it. And that's really what this is all about, the vision for this company. And I think that's why we're trying to incorporate all of these different elements for everybody listening.
Yeah, it's a journey of self-actualization, isn't it? We're like, our mission is to continually optimize our lives for happiness, and in doing that, it allows us to pursue these things that we're able to do every day, and allows us to be curious and to focus on these pursuits that you and I really enjoy. But we only enjoy that because they're still continuously moving us forward and putting us into that flow state,
100%. I'm going to do some quick fire questions for you. Sorry, Andy. I don't know what Andy was just doing, so we're gonna pin that on Andy just then. All right. So what's, based on what we've talked about today, what's your one piece of advice for people when it comes to gaining financial freedom?
Look at your expenses. Drill down on where your money is going, and don't appease others by purchasing goods that you don't necessarily want or care about. Realize the things that actually make you happy and pursue them at all costs. Focus on them, and everything else will come along with it.
Awesome. All right, the next one is generational wealth. This is a really interesting one. A lot of people look to build wealth to pass it down to someone. Is that something you believe in? And or do you think that it's better for someone to work that out themselves?
That's a good question. I would say, to me, it means a lot. I'll be teaching my kids all about financial literacy. I'll be teaching them to stack sats, all of this sort of thing, and to sort of make their life a little bit easier, because you don't want your kids or your grandkids to have that struggle, because it is like, the grind is hard. It's hard for a reason, because it feels like the whole system is against you. And so for me, it's important. But yes, there is an element where you have to allow them to learn that for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is a really hard one. Like, I definitely want to do it, but I definitely want, I want my children to I don't actually not want them to experience what I experience, because I think it's like, there's a saying, name the son of a good man who's the son of a good man. And
I don't mean like spoiling them to the point where like they're getting cars and all that sort of thing. I just like, for me, it's about allowing them to live in a nice home, to be able to go to a good school, to be able to not have to worry about where their next meal coming from and that sort of thing. I think it comes down to the morals and that sort of thing that you're actually teaching them along the way. And so if you're giving them those life lessons where you have conversations about money over the dinner table, and you're teaching them about how to be a good person and to communicate with other people and to treat people with respect. I think just having that backup where they've got that level of understanding about how it all works, I think that's the way that you want it to work. You know, you don't just want to be going out there and buying them cars and all that sort of thing, because that comes with all other sorts of issues.
For sure. All right, so to follow up that then, what's your biggest piece of advice for someone who might be 20 years old and watching this?
Go out there and try everything. And upskill and just be curious about the world. Go out and travel, but also work hard. Work hard. Find a mentor if you can as well. Finding mentor was the biggest game changer for me because it got me into goal setting. It started making me actually think about money, and it taught me new skills. So that's what I would focus on.
For sure. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up, guys. So financial freedom. Well, you got your three levels of financial freedom, which is financially solvent, financially robust, and then eventually financial freedom. But I think the biggest takeaway is get your money in the markets. Start looking and doing your research. Go get mentors. Surround yourself with good people that are going to bring you up, that are going to guide you in the right way, and look to get that money to work for you, to hold its value. And that's how you can start to get the compound growth that we're talking about.
And don't just get your money into the markets, because if you do that, like, come up with a strategy first that's going to work for you. Because if you happen to invest last week and now you're going through the market, what we're seeing today,
it's not a bad thing though, right?
Oh no, it's great, because if you can get through something like this, it's going to give you a stronger stomach for what's to come in the future. I think there was a study that was done. If you hold your investment for at least 10 years, there's like 99.7% of the time you're going to make money. There's going to be companies within your portfolio that you actually lose money on, but over the course of how it all plays out, your winners tend to win, and they win big. So focus in on that.
Oh, God, thank God we're finishing right now. I've got the hiccups. So I'm struggling. But, guys, we really hope you enjoyed this episode. Sorry, I really hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. We're going to keep trying to tell this story and help you guys navigate life and again, around business, wealth, and character. Obviously, we kind of went in a bit more depth into why we do what we do and what we're trying to do with this podcast. So we really appreciate all the support. Like, honestly, I can't say how grateful I am, and I know everybody else is, about the support that we're getting right now. All the shares on Instagram, all the just the messages, the comments, watching, subscribing to the channel, absolutely everything. It's amazing. So we're just really appreciative, really grateful, and we're really glad to be a part of your journey. I'm losing it. I'm sorry, guys. Really hope you enjoy the episode, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.